The desert used to be alive once. Now it was nothing but red dust and dry bones. The twin suns had scorched the planet's surface until not even the strongest creatures dared to walk during daylight. And yet, somewhere near the abandoned border zone of Sector R9, a girl was crouched over two small, trembling creatures wrapped in tattered cloth, hiding under the shadow of a half-buried cargo hauler. She wasn't human. Her skin shimmered faint blue under the flickering wreck lights, and her long silver hair stuck to her face from sweat. Her name was Rayleigh, and she hadn't drunk water in 2 days. But it wasn't herself she was worried about. It was her pets. Creatures looked like a mix of fox and bird, tiny, winged mammals that made soft clicking noises when scared. Now they didn't even have the strength to cry. Their small tongues hung dry and swollen from their beaks. Rayleigh pressed a cracked canteen against their lips, shaking it. Nothing came out. Just sand. She bit her lip and looked up at the burning sky. No help was coming. Not from her own kind. Not from the others. Not since the war. 3 days ago, humans and her people had been allies. Then something exploded in orbit, a misunderstanding, or maybe something worse. Both sides blamed the other. Peace talks failed. Her people retreated. The humans advanced. She was left behind in the chaos. And the humans didn't care. Or so she thought. Footsteps crunched across the sand. Rayleigh's heart jumped. She grabbed a rusted metal pipe beside her and held it tight, shielding her body. Over her creatures, a shadow moved around the wreckage. Heavy boots. A human. He stopped at the edge of the broken wall, raising both hands to show he wasn't holding a weapon. His voice was low and tired. I saw smoke. Wasn't sure if it was a trap. Rayleigh didn't answer. Her hands were shaking. She didn't trust his voice. He stepped closer. He looked worn out, like he'd been walking for days. Dust caked his face. His armor was half melted, and the badge on his chest had burned off. Long ago. Then he saw the creatures, and the girl, and the pipe in her hands. They're yours? He asked, eyes narrowing on the tiny shapes in her arms. Rayleigh didn't move. Her throat was too dry to speak. She only nodded. He knelt slowly, pulled something from his side pouch, and set it on the ground. It was a small black water flask. Almost full. I won't come closer. Let them drink first. She blinked, confused. No one would give water to a stranger out here. Especially not to an alien. Why? She croaked finally, voice cracking. He looked at her, not like a soldier, but like a man who'd lost things too. Because they're dying, and so are you. But if they go first, you'll never forgive yourself. Her hands trembled as she reached for the flask. She didn't trust him, but her creatures needed help more than she needed to be careful. She dripped water onto their tongues. Just enough. They moved. Weakly. She wanted to cry, but had no tears left. The man didn't speak again until both creatures had licked the last drops. Then he stood up and scanned the horizon. You shouldn't stay here. A drone patrol passed 30 minutes ago. If they scan this wreck, they'll torch it with you inside. You're human, she said, eyes locked on him. He nodded. Used to be part of the 11th Recon Unit. He paused, then added, I don't fight for anyone now. Really didn't understand. Why help me? He looked down at the flask now empty. Because they looked like they didn't deserve to die just because someone else started a war. Silence stretched between them. Wind blew sand through the cracks of the metal wall. Come on, he said after a long moment. There's an outpost north. It's abandoned, but it has shelter. Maybe more water. She hesitated, holding her pets close. They were breathing again. That was enough for now. She followed him. He didn't look back to see if she was behind him, but he walked slower. Just enough for her to catch up. And as the red sun dipped low over the dead lands, 2 survivors, 1 human, 1 alien, moved forward, watched by tiny blinking eyes. And something in the air shifted. Not peace, not yet, but maybe the first step toward it. The sun had nearly disappeared behind the jagged rocks, but the heat still clung to the desert like a second skin. Rayleigh walked in silence beside the human, her small creatures curled tightly in the cloth pressed to her chest. Their weak chirps were the only sounds besides the crunch of boots on dry sand. He hadn't told her his name. She hadn't asked. Trust wasn't something that bloomed overnight. Not between two species who just declared war. But there was something strange about him, not the usual coldness of soldiers. He didn't walk like a hunter or someone looking for power. He walked like someone tired of fighting. As night came, the wind grew sharp and bitter. Rayleigh stumbled once. The human reached to steady her but pulled his hand back quickly. She noticed. "I'm not going to bite," she said softly. He gave a short chuckle. "You might, if you knew what side I fought for. You said you don't fight for anyone now." He nodded. "Yeah, that's true." They reached a ridge of scorched stone. At the top, the old outpost stood, a rust-covered bunker half buried in the sand. It looked forgotten, but the human moved with purpose. This place was part of the old mining route, he explained. "My squad passed through it once, before the treaties broke." Rayleigh's legs were shaking as they stepped inside. It was dark and musty, but it was shelter. That was enough. The human swept the floor, clear of debris, then opened a rusted crate in the corner. Still locked. He pulled a tool from his belt and jammed it into the latch. With a grunt and a loud crack, it broke open. Inside, an old solar heater, 3 ration bars, and 2 sealed water pouches. He tossed one to her. She caught it with both hands, staring at it like it was a holy gift. "They're alive because of you," she said. "They're alive because I had one last pouch. And because you didn't give up." She knelt and let the creatures drink again, carefully, not wasting a drop. This time, their tiny wings twitched. One of them opened its eyes. She smiled for the first time. It was small and weak but real. "You still haven't told me your name," she said. He sat down, biting into a ration bar like it was cardboard. "Garrick. Corporal Garrick Rain, used to be. I'm Rayleigh." She looked at the sleeping animals beside her. "And this is Z, and this one's lower." Garrick glanced at the 2 fragile beings curled against her. "Never seen pets like those. Yours? They're not just pets, they're bondlings. When they imprint, they stay connected to your heartbeat. If I died, they'd stop breathing too." His eyes widened slightly. "That's intense." "Your people call them pests," she added, voice cold. "On my world, they're family." Garrick leaned back against the wall, sighing. "My people call a lot of things pests. Sometimes. Even other humans." That silence came back between them. This time, it didn't feel so sharp. It felt tired. She finally asked, "Why did your people start the bombing?" He looked up slowly. "We didn't, at least not intentionally. Command said your orbit station fired first." Rayleigh's brow furrowed. "Our people said the same about yours. Then someone lied. Or wanted a war. Why would anyone want that?" Garrick stared at the cracked ceiling above. "Profit, control, maybe fear." He closed his eyes. "Sometimes leaders need enemies to stay in power." Rayleigh looked down at Z and lower. She stroked their feathers, which were no longer brittle with thirst. "I only wanted to study stars," she whispered. "My people sent me to a research base to chart cosmic storms, not to fight. I don't even know how to use a weapon." Garrick opened one eye. "You hit me with a metal pipe earlier." "That was instinct," she said with a small grin. "And fear." He chuckled again. "Fair enough." They sat in silence for a long time. Only the wind howling through the cracks in the bunker. Then Rayleigh asked, almost in a whisper, "What happens now?" Garrick didn't answer right away. He looked toward the west window, where faint orange lights blinked in the sky. Drones or satellites. "Maybe both. Tomorrow," he said finally, We find out if anyone still wants us alive." She nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. But deep inside, for the first time since the war began, she felt something unexpected. Hope. By morning, the sky over the desert had turned a strange purple gray. Dust storms were building on the horizon, silent and slow like giants rising from sleep. Inside the bunker, the solar heater hummed faintly. Rayleigh sat on the floor with her bondlings curled beside her. Z was awake now, peeking at Garrick from under her elbow. Lower let out a faint chirp and fluttered one wing. Garrick leaned against the wall, checking the old transmitter panel. His fingers moved across cracked keys, wiping off sand as he tried to bring it back to life. Sparks popped. Then a weak signal. Bar blinked green. "It's working?" Rayleigh asked, her voice cautious. "Partially," he muttered. "Short range only. No real connection to command, but if there's any patrols out there, they might pick it up." Her eyes narrowed. "You want to call them? Your people?" He turned to face her. "If I wanted to hand you over, I would have done it last night. You think they'd believe me if I said I saved an enemy girl and her desert birds? They're not birds," she said sharply. "They're bondlings, I know." He gave a tired smile. "I listened when you talked. Doesn't mean I understand it all, but I'm trying." She studied him. Garrick's armor was scorched and patched. His face was lined with exhaustion, but his eyes were honest. More honest than anyone she'd seen since the fighting started. "What happens if your people do answer that signal?" she asked. "Then we hide or run. I don't know. But I needed a way to scan the weather patterns. That's why I turned it on." He pointed to a corner screen. It flickered with dusty data. Symbols blinked in red. Storms changing course. Coming right at us in the next 6 hours. Rayleigh's face went pale. "How strong?" "Big enough to bury this outpost if we stay. We need to move fast." She looked down at her bondlings. They were stronger now, but still fragile. "How far is shelter?" "There's an old emergency station in the cliff valleys, maybe 10 kilometers west, if the maps are right. And if they're not?" He shrugged. "Then we dig ourselves out of the sand." She stood, wrapping Z and Lower in the cloth sling again. "Then let's go." They packed quickly. Garrick broke apart the transmitter, salvaging 2 power cells and slipping them into his pack. Rayleigh grabbed the remaining food bar and water pouch. The creatures chirped softly as she stepped into the blazing light. The heat returned fast. Wind kicked up grit into their eyes. They wrapped cloth around their faces and moved west, keeping low. Garrick walked in front, scanning with his visor. Rayleigh followed, footsteps light. She kept her eyes on the human. For a while, there was only the wind. Then, a distant noise, a low, rumbling hum. Rayleigh stopped. "What's that?" Garrick crouched quickly. "Get down." They ducked behind a broken ridge. Overhead, a small aerial drone swept past. Blinking blue, recon. It hovered briefly, scanning the sand, then zipped away toward the south. "Did it see us?" she asked. "I don't know," he answered. "But that wasn't ours. That was yours." She blinked. "Mine?" That model was deployed to science stations only. It shouldn't be scanning combat zones. He frowned. "Maybe someone's looking for you. That's not good." "Not necessarily bad either," Garrick said slowly. "Depends who's pulling the strings." They kept moving, faster now. Rayleigh could feel the storm pushing wind at their backs. The sky grew darker, clouds spinning like smoke. Her bondlings cried out softly, uneasy. Then she stumbled. Garrick turned fast and caught her before she hit the ground. "Sand's loose here," she said, brushing off her knees. "There's something under." Suddenly the ground cracked. She fell forward into a sinkhole. Garrick shouted and grabbed her arm, straining. Her legs dangled in the darkness, bondlings screeching. The sand crumbled beneath him. Without thinking, he dropped his pack and slid halfway down, locking his legs on a rock shelf and pulling her up with both arms. Her breath was sharp with panic. He pulled harder until she was safe. Then the ledge under his feet gave way. He dropped. Rayleigh screamed, but he hit something soft-cushioned. A layer of vines hidden under the sand. He groaned, coughing. "I'm okay," he called up, voice echoing. "I landed." In something weird, Rayleigh looked down. "That's not sand." She climbed down carefully beside him. Beneath them was a hollowed-out crater filled with twisted roots and a strange blue glow. They stared at it. "What is this place?" Garrick asked. Rayleigh stepped closer. Her eyes widened. "This isn't just a shelter. This is alien-grown." She touched the wall. "This wasn't made by machines. This was grown, and very recently." He looked at her. "So who or what lives here now?" They both turned slowly, hearing something move deeper in the shadows. Something alive. The roots beneath their feet pulsed faintly, like veins under skin. Blue light flickered along the walls, responding to their movements. The air was damp, an unnatural kind of wetness in the middle of a dying desert. Garrick slowly reached for his sidearm, more out of instinct than intent to fire. Rayleigh raised her hand. "Don't," she whispered. "If this place is alive, it's listening." From deep within the chamber, a sound echoed, soft at first, like breathing. Then something scraped gently against the root walls. A shadow appeared. Garrick raised his weapon but didn't fire. His heart pounded. The figure that stepped into the light wasn't human. But it wasn't like Rayleigh either. It was taller, with bark-like skin, moss growing along its limbs, and glowing green eyes like twin embers in a hollow skull. It didn't speak. Rayleigh stepped forward slowly, pressing her hand to her chest in a symbol of peace. "We are travelers. We didn't mean to enter your sanctuary." The creature tilted its head. It looked down at Rayleigh, then at Garrick, and finally at the two small bondlings in her arms. A deep vibration rumbled through the ground. Not a threat, something like a question. "I think it's asking why we came," Rayleigh said. Garrick kept his eyes on the creature. "Tell it we were trying to escape a storm." Before she could translate, the creature stepped aside and gestured deeper into the chamber. "An invitation," she said quietly. "It's offering us safety, or a trap," Garrick muttered. But he followed anyway. They walked into a larger dome of living roots. In the center was a pool of clear water, glowing slightly. It wasn't deep, but it shimmered with a kind of energy Rayleigh had only seen in sacred springs on her homeworld. She rushed forward and gently let Z and lower down beside the pool. The bondlings sniffed, then dipped their beaks in and drank greedily. Within moments, their feathers brightened, and they stood on shaky legs. Z chirped happily. Rayleigh stared, stunned. "It's healing them." Garrick looked to the creature. "You knew they were dying, didn't you?" The creature didn't answer, at least not in words. Instead, its hand touched the wall, and blue light surged upward. Images formed. Not pictures, memories. A vision of war. Explosions, ships burning. In orbit, human soldiers and Rayleigh's people fighting. And in the center, a single flash of light. A satellite being shot down. Rayleigh gasped. "It's showing us what really happened." Garrick stared, stunned. That satellite, it was third party. Neither of our factions launched that strike. "Someone wanted war," Rayleigh said, eyes wide. "And they made sure both sides would blame each other." The vision faded. Garrick looked to the plant being. "You're ancient, aren't you? You've seen more than we ever could." The creature stepped forward and placed something in Rayleigh's hands. A smooth, dark seed. "What is it?" Garrick asked. Rayleigh turned it over. "A memory seed. My people used to grow these to carry truth from place to place." The creature gently tapped its chest, then pointed to Rayleigh. "It's trusting you to carry this truth," Garrick said. "To tell others. But who will believe us? she whispered. No one wants peace right now. Everyone's afraid. Or angry. Then we make them believe, Garrick said. We show them what we saw. The walls pulsed again. Another image appeared, an underground map. A route leading from this place to a hidden canyon with an old Cums tower. If we reach that, Garrick said, we can send this truth out. Broadcast it everywhere. But the storm, Raeli began, is already here. A deep rumble shook the chamber. Dust fell from the roof above. The creature turned toward the pool and laid both hands on the water. The glow pulsed, and suddenly the roots tightened across the ceiling, forming a protective dome. It's shielding us, Raeli whispered. It's going to let us wait it out. They sat beside the pool while the storm raged above, the creature watching silently. Z and Lower slept soundly now, their feathers soft and warm. Raeli looked at them, then at the seed in her hand, and for the first time, she realized something. This war wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about truth. And she had the one thing that could end it. She looked at Garrick, and he nodded. They weren't just survivors now. They were messengers. The once flat sands were now carved by wind into sharp ridges and deep channels. The sun returned, fierce and unforgiving, but the roots of the underground sanctuary had held strong. Inside, the air was cool and still. Raeli opened her eyes to find her bondlings curled beside her, fully rested. Their eyes were bright, feathers clean. Z let out a cheerful chirp, and Lower fluttered one wing over Raeli's face. She smiled for the first time in days. Garrick sat by the entrance tunnel, adjusting the power cells he'd salvaged. His weapon was disassembled beside him, each part cleaned with care. He wasn't preparing for war. He was preparing for escape or survival. Maybe both. Raeli walked over quietly, still holding the smooth memory seed in her palm. She crouched beside him and asked, "Do you think anyone will still be listening out there?" Garrick didn't look up. "Someone will, doesn't matter if they're human or not. We just need one person who hasn't given up yet." She nodded. "Slowly, then we go to the tower. Today." He strapped the battery to a portable transmitter and stood. "Yeah, before anyone else finds this place." The creature, the plant being that had saved them, stood nearby. It hadn't moved much, but as they prepared to leave, it stepped forward and pressed a hand to Garrick's chest. Not to hurt him, but to mark him. A faint green light passed into his armor, forming a symbol like twisting vines on a sun. "Really?" Breath caught. "It gave you a sigil. You're now a bearer of truth." "I don't know what that means," Garrick said carefully. "It means it chose you too," she replied. He looked down at the glowing mark, then sighed. "I didn't sign up for this." "No one ever does," Raeli said softly. "But that doesn't mean we don't carry it anyway." They climbed out of the sanctuary just after midday. The desert was still and quiet, but not dead. The storm had uncovered old trails and half-buried metal towers, ancient tech left by miners or travelers from long ago. With the sun overhead, Garrick used the cliffs for shade, leading Raeli across a winding canyon that sloped westward. The map burned into their handheld, showed the Cum Tower deep inside the cliff maze. If it still stood, they'd have a chance to send the memory seed's vision to every military channel, civilian frequency, and orbital station. It was a slim chance. But it was something. Around them, the desert began to shift. Cracks opened. In the rock walls, the ground felt wrong. Raeli stopped suddenly. Her bondlings hissed and pressed close to her chest. "Something's here," she said. Garrick lifted his scanner. The screen flickered. "Movement. Under us." Too late. The ground exploded upward in a spray of sand and stone. Raeli screamed and fell back as Garrick raised his weapon. 3 towering machines rose from the Earth hybrid drones, not of human or Raeli's design. They were rusted, dark, and pulsing with red light. Someone else had sent them. Someone who didn't want the truth getting out. "They're third party," Garrick growled, saying tech from the vision. "They must have tracked the seed." Rayleigh shouted. The lead drone aimed a pulse cannon straight at her. Without thinking, Garrick dove between them, again just like when they first met. The blast hit his shoulder and sent him flying back. Smoke rose from his armor, but he pushed himself up, teeth clenched in pain. "Run!" he shouted. "I'm not leaving you." She screamed, reaching for the memory seed. The bondlings jumped from her arms and darted between the drones, chirping wildly. The machine's paused sensors confused by the unpredictable movement. Rayleigh used the moment to activate the seed. It pulsed in her hand, and then released a shockwave of blue light. The machine staggered. Suddenly, the roots of the desert cracked open again, and vines surged from below, called by the seed. The sanctuary's will had followed them. The vines wrapped around the drone's limbs and pulled hard. The earth itself resisted their enemy. Within moments, the machines were dragged back under the sand, screeching, their signals fading into static. Silence returned. Garrick groaned and sat up, his arms smoking. "Okay, I officially believe in your plants now." Rayleigh ran to him, checking the burn. "You keep jumping in front of me. You keep standing in front of death," he said with a weak grin. The seed in her hand had gone dim. "But it had done its job. They'll send more," Rayleigh said. "Whoever they are, then we need to move faster." They limped together toward the canyon's edge. Below, hidden in the rocks, the old tower stood broken, but still upright. Just enough to send a signal. Rayleigh looked at Garrick. "We end this," she said. He nodded. "We end this." The tower stood like a wounded sentinel over the canyon floor, its steel legs twisted from time and wind. It leaned slightly to one side, as if it might fall with the next breeze. But it was still intact enough to serve one last purpose. Rayleigh and Garrick moved carefully through the broken scaffolding, stepping over collapsed beams and shattered solar panels. Garrick's arm was still burned from the drone attack. He kept it pressed tight against his chest as he climbed, biting down against the pain. "I can go first," Rayleigh offered, looking up the spiral stairs. "You don't know how to reconnect the relay lines," Garrick replied through gritted teeth. "This tower's human tech." "I do." She didn't argue. She just stayed close. The bondlings clung to her shoulders, scanning every creak and crack of the tower with sharp eyes. Their chirps came low and soft, now warnings, but not of enemies. Just urgency. Time was running out. When they reached the main relay platform, Garrick slumped beside the control panel and opened the casing. Wires spilled out like torn veins. Most of the console was fried. He stared at it for a few seconds, before pulling out the power cell from his pack. "This might be just enough to fire a single burst," he muttered. "Will that be enough?" Rayleigh asked, holding the memory. "Seed close. If the signal is clean, yeah. If not," he trailed off and looked at her. "We don't get a second chance." Rayleigh took a deep breath, then gently placed the seed on the transmitter's node. The alien device pulsed once blue and steady, and then melted slightly, merging with the human tech like it had been made for it all along. Garrick stared in shock. "Well, that's new." "Truth adapts," Rayleigh said quietly. He connected the power cell and flipped the manual override switch. The tower shuddered. Low hum spread through the metal like a living heartbeat. Old antennas groaned, turning toward the sky for the first time in decades. Garrick leaned into the cracked speaker and began transmitting. "This is Corporal Garrick Rain. Identification code Alpha 11 Kilo. I'm transmitting from Relay Tower 7F, West Canyon Ridge, Outer Zone R9. I am not acting under current military command." He glanced at Rayleigh, who nodded. "I am broadcasting a memory seed," he continued, "containing proof that the war was triggered by a false flag attack using third-party drone tech. Neither human nor alien factions initiated the first strike. This war began under manipulation. He looked down at the power cell. It was already draining. If anyone is out there, human, alien, or otherwise, listen. This isn't a battle for land anymore. It's a battle for truth. And truth doesn't care what species you are. He hit the transmit key. The console buzzed. Lights blinked rapidly. The seed glowed bright blue as the data encoded into every open channel within range. Then silence. Garrick exhaled slowly. It's done. Rayleigh touched his shoulder. Now we wait? No, he said, scanning the horizon. Now we run. She turned and saw why. More dust clouds were forming fast. But these weren't from storms. These were engine trails. Hovercrafts. Low-flying fighters. Drones. Multiple factions were coming. I guess they heard you, Rayleigh said. Too well, Garrick muttered. He pulled her toward a maintenance ladder on the far side of the tower. They climbed down fast. Her bondlings flying ahead to scout. Z chirped loudly, flapping toward a rocky outcrop below. They found cover. Rayleigh shouted. They reached the canyon floor just as engines roared above. Small black aircraft zipped overhead, scanning. Garrick grabbed Rayleigh's wrist and pulled her behind a rock wall. 2 ships passed. Then 3 more, one marked with human insignias, one with Rayleigh's people's crest, and one unmarked. She pointed. That third one, I've never seen that design. Neither have I, Garrick said, narrowing his eyes. That's them. The third faction. Whoever started all this. The ships began to circle the tower, but no one fired. Not yet, from afar. They saw the tower's antennas still turning, data still humming in the air. Garrick turned to Rayleigh, breath short. We gave the galaxy the truth, but it's not enough. Someone has to live to defend it. She nodded. Then let's survive. Long enough to make them listen. He looked at her. Rayleigh looked at her. This girl he'd once seen as an enemy. A stranger. Now she was his only ally, and maybe she was the only reason he still believed peace was even possible. Together, they disappeared into the canyons. Behind them, the truth continued to echo across the stars. But the real fight had only just begun. The canyons were alive now. Engines whined through narrow rock veins. Shadows stretched across the desert floor, cast by ships both known and unknown. But deep inside the maze of stone, the human and the alien girl moved like ghosts. Rayleigh's heart pounded, not from fear but from purpose. She had something no one else had, the memory of what really happened. And beside her, limping but steady, was Garrick, the only human who hadn't pointed a weapon at her, who had instead handed her water in the desert and taken a cannon blast. For her bondlings, they crawled under a collapsed ridge and entered an old tunnel system, once used by sand harvesters. Now it was just broken steel and darkness. Rayleigh paused. We can't keep running forever. We don't have to, Garrick said, breath heavy. He sat down, finally letting the pain in his arm catch up. We just have to hold long enough for someone with power to hear that message. She knelt beside him and opened her patch. The signal tower's pulse was still active, repeating across every frequency. Then her wristband chirped. Garrick looked over. Alert, it's my people, she said. High command. They heard the message. They want confirmation. Her voice cracked. They said it matches what they suspected. But they didn't know how to prove it. Now they do, Garrick said quietly. Thanks to you. The moment hung there in the air, filled with something heavy and beautiful. Vindication. But it wasn't over yet. Another voice broke through. This time through Garrick's cum. This is Commander Harker of the 17th Human Detachment. We received your transmission, Rain. We're standing by. But unidentified hostiles are converging on the relay site. If that data falls into enemy hands, they won't get it, Garrick said. But if we die here, people need to act fast. Spread it, don't sit on it. Copy that. Rayleigh lowered her cum. My fleet's mobilizing. They're sending A protective dome over the tower now. Then Z chirped loud, high-pitched, frightened. Something was coming. From the end of the tunnel, red lights flared. A new drone entered, sleeker, sharper, nothing like human or alien military units. It scanned rapidly, eyes glowing like twin orbs of fire. "Go," Garrick said, raising his weapon. "No," Rayleigh shouted, pulling out a device from her sling. "This isn't just a fight anymore. This is about exposure." She activated a signal flare from the sanctuary, something the root being had planted inside the memory seed. It flared with organic blue light, confusing the drone systems. Garrick fired once direct hit. The drone sparked, but didn't fall. Then lower leapt from Rayleigh's shoulder and dove toward the drone, wings open, chirping in a frenzied tone. The drone turned just enough for Garrick to reload. This time he didn't miss. The explosion lit the tunnel in blue and orange. Silence followed. Rayleigh ran forward, scooping up lower. The bondling twitched, singed but alive. She hugged it close. Garrick coughed, eyes scanning the smoke. That was too close. Rayleigh checked the scanner. No more incoming ... yet. A chime echoed from her band. Then a voice. "This is Admiral Ralton. Your message has been verified. Your location is marked. We are deploying joint rescue units, human and alien alike." Garrick blinked. Rayleigh stared. "They're cooperating?" "Your proof forced them to speak," the voice continued. "What you did may have just saved thousands of lives." They both sat there, silent. Then Garrick leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "I can't believe this all started with water." Rayleigh smiled faintly. "Water. And one fool who gave it away instead of keeping it." "You're welcome," Garrick muttered. Outside, ships began to land near the tower. Armored troops surrounded it, not to destroy, but to protect. Across dozens of systems, the truth spread uncensored, undeniable. Leaders on both sides were forced to answer. Not with weapons, but with words. Later that night, aboard a neutral ship, Rayleigh stood beside a recovery bed. Garrick lay inside it, bandaged and hooked to a gentle healing rig. Her bondlings lay curled beside him, like silent guardians. He opened one eye and looked at her. Double quotes, so ... "What happens now?" he asked. She smiled, voice soft. "Now ... we rebuild, together." He closed his eyes again, finally at peace. Because in a war full of lies, pain, and broken loyalties, one human had done the unthinkable. He'd given up the last of his water, not to save himself, but to save life. And that had changed everything.